Hello again. As you know, I am Eli, the computer guy, and this is episode 336, Introduction to Online Backups for Technology Professionals. So today, in this episode, I am going to be talking about backing up your or your client's data up to the internet, up to the cloud. Now, as I talk about with most of these classes, most of these videos, whenever we're talking about the cloud, I have found that in the real world, most technicians don't really grasp what is going on, and this causes problems because they can be doing things more efficiently and more effectively if they do. A lot of people, when they think about online backup, the first thing they go to is they go to Mozy.com or Carbonite, they get a service, they install the service on the client's computers, and then they go, yes, we have online backup now. Well, Mozy and Carbonite are fine. They're okay for what they do, but that is not the sum total of what online backup is, and there are probably better solutions for you, especially as a tech professional. If you're looking just to back up your grandmother's data off of her PC, you want to set it up and you don't want to think about it ever again, probably something like Mozy or Carbonite is fine. But when you're dealing with your systems, when you're dealing with your client systems, when you're dealing with production systems, Mozy and Carbonite are probably not very good options out there, and you will run into problems in the future. So we're going to be talking about this today in this episode. So the idea with online backup isn't too complicated. Essentially, all you're doing is you're backing up your data that's on your computer or server and putting it up onto the internet. So you're backing it up through your internet service provider's connection up to somewhere on the internet. Now, there are two general concepts for these online backup solutions, and most of these concepts fall into the first category. So most online backup solutions simply copy files and folders up into whatever storage that there is on the internet. So basically it copies your documents, it copies your pictures, it may copy some database files, but that's all of it does. Now, when you're dealing with backups, you can either have a backup that only copies files and folders, or you can have what is called a bare metal backup. A bare metal backup not just backs up the files and folders, but also backs up the operating system, the applications, so on and so forth. So normally, when you have backups in a production environment, if the server crashes, if the hard drive crashes, you have what are called bare metal backups, so that you can simply put in a new hard drive, you can restore from the backup, and you are up and running. So back when I was a consultant, I had this happen on a number of servers. Basically, we had the backups, I put in a new hard drive, I booted off the backup, recovered, and within 2 hours everything was working just like it was working the day before. No issues, no problems, so on and so forth. The problem is with a lot of these online backups, something that you should be looking at is that they don't do bare metal backups, they only do file and folder. Why that's important is that means that if your computer crashes, the hard drive fails, so on and so forth, that if you have to do recovery, you've only saved the files and folders. If you have to get that server back up and running, it means you'll have to install the hard drive, then you'll have to install the operating system, then you have to install all the updates, then you have to install and configure all the applications, and then once all of that is done, you can pull the files down and you have a working server again. Now that's going to take you a lot of time. So if you have a bare metal backup and you do a restore on that, your server is literally up and running in an hour. Maybe less, maybe 30 minutes if you have a good system. If you have to sit there and you have to install the operating system and the application and do all the updates, you guys have been doing this stuff long enough. You know that server is probably not going to be up and running until tomorrow, hopefully. Hopefully, as long as nothing goes really screwy. So those are the two overall types of backups that you should be looking at. Generally, if you're using something like Mozy.com or Carbonite, or we're going to talk about like Google Drive, if you're using any of that kind of stuff, those are only file and folder backup. It's not a bare metal. In order to get something like a bare metal backup, you would have to go with a service such as Acronis or possibly Ghost. So these are pieces of software, like full piece of software that you actually install onto your computer. So that's the first thing that you should be thinking about with this. Now the next thing, when we talk about these backups, is I should mention version control for you. What is version control? Well, version control has the software keep previous copies of documents, files, and folders for a set amount of time or for a set amount of circumstances. So it may, every time you make changes to a particular file, it may keep all changes for the past 30 days. Or it may keep the last 10 changes. So not only does it keep a backup of the current file, but it also keeps all of those previous modifications. Why this is important, especially in the online backup world, is think about it. You're backing up to the online world, and you only have one set of backups. So in a normal backup environment, a local backup environment, you have sets of media. So you may back up to a hard drive, you may back up to a tape. So this week we're going to use this hard drive, next week we use this hard drive, the other week we use, and we put those into rotation. So if somebody goes and deletes a file or folder, that deletion is going to be replicated to the backup. So if you have sets of media, that's no big deal, because then you can go back to a previous set of the media and still be able to recover that file or folder. If you're backing up to the internet, you only have one set of media. So if somebody deletes a folder full of lots and lots and lots of important information, and that deletion gets replicated up to that backup that you're creating, well, now it's gone entirely unless you have some type of version control. Or if somebody goes in and makes horrific modifications to a file or folder, you know, they go in and you have pictures and they just totally mess everything up. If those get saved and then they get backed up, well, the service has backed up your data, but that's still not usable for you. So version controls allows you to have these multiple versions of the files or folders. So when I talk about doing these online backups, again, there's a couple of different ways you can do online backups. You can purchase a service, or you can have a piece of software installed on your computer. Now, a lot of people, whenever they're thinking about backups, they will either think of Ghost or Cronus or Veritas, or they think of a service like Mozy.com or Carbonite. Nowadays, there are other options that you should be thinking about depending on what you need. So one of the ways that I do my online backups is you now can use Google Drive. So there is a lot of these online storage services that do synchronization that can allow you to do backups. So I back up all my video files to Google Drive. That way I know they're up on Google Drive. Now this is something to think about again as professionals. A lot of people would argue that Google Drive isn't technically a piece of backup software. Well, it's backing up my data, and it does it for a very reasonable price and does it very effectively. So therefore, for me, it is a backup solution. So this is, again, one of those things you have to think about with the online services. The next thing that you should be thinking about with these online services, one of the questions is how often does the service back up your data? So a lot of services now do data backup in real time. What that means is every time you make a modification to a file or folder, that automatically gets synchronized to that online backup file. Now, depending on what you're doing, this can be good or bad. If you have a very, very good, high-quality internet connection, synchronizing the backups all the time can be a very good thing. On the other hand, if you have 50 users in a building and you only have something like a T1 line, if those backups are continuously synchronizing, then you can run into issues because you run out of bandwidth. Think if 20 users at all times are backing up to some kind of online backup service, that can bring everything crashing down. The internet service will stop functioning. So that's another one of the things that you're going to be having to think about this. Another thing that you should be thinking about is what size are you going to split your archive into? So a lot of these backup solutions create an archive file for the backup. So normally this is not an issue in the local world when you're just dealing with backup software locally. It doesn't matter. It generally creates one big archive file. So all the files and folders, the operating system, everything gets bundled into this one file called the backup archive, and it is stored somewhere, right? The problem is that backup archive file can be massive, 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 massive. I mean, when I say massive, I mean maybe 10 gigs, 20 gigs, 100 gigs. Who knows how big it is? Now the issue is how the internet works when it's transferring data somewhere. So when your computer is going to transfer data to a server out on the internet, it will be transferring that data, and if there's any problems in the communication, all the transfer that has happened so far will fail and it will start over again. So if you are trying to transfer archives that are 10 gigs in size, the chances are that archive will never in fact get backed up. Why? Because it's trying to transfer that entire 10 gig file that's going to take it 5 hours to begin with. And then during that 5 hours, there's going to be some little spastic thing with the internet, which is going to reset the connection. So then it's going to have to redo the 10 gigs. And then there'll be something to reset, and then redo. So what you do is you split the archive file down to the smallest size you possibly can. Hopefully you get it down to, I don't know, 5 or 10 megs. Why? Because what it is, you have this whole big archive, and then you split it down into these little 10 meg chunks. Then those 10 meg chunks are their own individual files, so those will individually get transferred up to the server. If something fails, you only have to resend that 10 megabyte chunk versus a 10 gig file. So that's one of the things you should be thinking about, is this archive splitting. The final thing before we go to the whiteboard, so I can explain a couple of things to you that you should be thinking about, is what type of technology that your online backup software is using in order to synchronize with whatever is up online, with wherever you're storing the data. So the general way that things get backed up is whenever there's a modification to a file, the entire file itself gets uploaded. So if you go in and you have a 10 meg Word file and you change, I don't know, the font in that file, when you make that modification and hit save, that entire file will be sent up onto the internet again. It will be backed up again. That can become a major problem when you're dealing with large files. So when you start dealing with files that are 100 megs in size, 500 megs in size, if you're dealing with CAD files, if you're dealing with picture files now that may be 100 megs in size, if the photographer goes on to modify that picture file, does one little thing, just does like red eye correction. That's all he does, red eye correction, right? Well, now that he did that little modification under the old system, that entire file still has to get backed up again, the entire 100 megs. So if he makes a lot of modifications, a lot of small modifications under these large files, the entire file is still going to get backed up onto the internet. Again, that is going to just bog down your internet speed. It's going to be horrible, nasty, blah. Well, the new technology, it's been around for a while, that's something that you should be thinking about looking at, is something called rsync. It's based on rsync, which is a Linux piece of software for transferring data. Why rsync is better than the old way is it only modifies the bits that have changed in the file. So what happens is before you modify, you do the red eye correction on that picture file, that entire picture file has to get re-backed up, the entire 100 meg file, right? Well, if you use something called rsync, if it uses a piece of technology called rsync, what it will do is it will look at the file that you modified, it will look at the file that's already been backed up, it will look for the individual changes, and then it will only send that amount of data. So if you make some small changes, instead of sending 100 megs up onto the internet, now you're sending kilobytes, maybe a couple of megabytes, but you're not sending the entire 100 megabyte file. So this is one of the important things that you should be thinking about with these backup online solutions. So you should be thinking about things like versioning, version control, whether you're going to be doing a bare metal backup versus simply files and folders, whether you're going to be doing rsync, what particular services you're going to be using. These are some of the concepts that you have to be thinking about as a technology professional when you are going to be picking an online backup solution. So now let's go over to the whiteboard so I can explain a couple more of the concepts. So basically, if you think about online backup, this doesn't seem like an overly complicated thing. You're probably wondering, why am I spending a whole episode on this? But it can get very complicated very quickly. And again, the thought processes that you use are very important. So if you have your computers, you have your servers here, and you decide to back all this data up somewhere onto the internet. So you're going to be using cloud backup, online backup. Now the first thing that you have to think about when you're going to be doing cloud backup and online backup is, as I always talk about now, you have to look at the speed of your internet connection. As I keep saying over and over and over again, download speed is oh so 2008. Everybody worried about download speed in 2008. Now you guys are having to worry about the upload speed. So it used to be you were a consumer of internet data, and so what mattered was the download speed. Well, now if you're going to be doing things like online backup, what becomes important is upload speed, because if you don't have enough upload speed, you're not going to be able to back up all these files and folders. So make sure you have a good upload speed connection. If you're going to be doing online backup, I would say you should have at least 2 megabits per second. At least. Now, why is that important? One of the reasons that's important, because you can say, well, Eli, even if I have a really slow connection upload speed, it will still back up at some point, right? Well, remember, when computers talk, especially with the TCP/IP protocol, they continuously communicate back and forth. So they send SYN and acknowledgments, right? So this sends a piece of data to this computer, then this computer says, hey, I received the data. So this one sends another piece and says, I received the data, so on and so forth. There's communication going back and forth. Even when you're downloading a file, if you're downloading a file, there's still communication going back the other way to say that you received the packets and to give the computer that you're downloading the information from acknowledgments that this is happening. Well, if you start doing online backups, and you bog down your entire upload bandwidth with this online backup, the problem is when you go to sites like CNN.com, when you start to do anything else on the internet, when these things need to send acknowledgments out to the servers that they're dealing with, all your upload speed has already been taken up by your online backup solution, and therefore even doing things like surfing the internet is going to suck. It's going to slow down and it's going to crash. So you may not think about this. You say, well, I'm going to use all of my upload speed because I'm going online uploads and I don't care. And then I'll still be able to do CNN.com or watch Hulu or Netflix or any of that. And if you use all of your upload bandwidth, no, everything gets wonky and nasty and horrible. Even going to surf websites is going to not work properly. So that's one of the reasons the upload speed is very important. So when you're dealing with upload speed, one of the concepts we've talked about before that you will deal with is something called bandwidth throttling. So normally with these applications and how TCP/IP works, they are network hogs. They say, I want to use the network, I need to use the network, so I'm going to use as much of the network as possible. Again, when you have network applications doing that, that can cause all kinds of problems with everything else on the network. So what you can do is you can do something called bandwidth throttling, which throttles back and says, for upload, for online backup, I will only allow you to use 500 kilobits per second. So if I have a 2 megabit per second upload connection, and I force my online backup to only use 500 kilobits per second of that, then I know I will be able to do other work on the internet in the office. So bandwidth throttling and this upload thing, again, is huge, Every time I hear modern technicians talk about download speed, I go, oh, he's not a professional. Because download speed, again, is so 2008. It's this upload speed that's going to be important. Now, for the bandwidth throttling, generally, most of the software that you can get will have bandwidth throttling built in, or you can download and install a piece of bandwidth throttling software on your computer to do this bandwidth throttling. So I think it's called Net Balancer is a piece of bandwidth throttling software. You can install that on your computer, you can install that on your server, and then you know that it will only use 500 kilobits of your speed. It won't try to use everything. Because again, if you're trying to upload lots of data, so like when we start doing these online backups, think about how much data you have. We're probably not talking about a gig or 10 gigs or 100 gigs. You may be talking about terabytes of data, especially for an office. So how long is it going to take to upload a terabyte of data? And if you're using all of the upload speed while that happens, you may bring that office to a crawl for weeks. Weeks and weeks and weeks. Talking about that, with how long these online backups can take, because that's one of the real problems. Something you should also realize with online backups is the speed is going to be controlled, yes, by you, but the speed of the backup is also going to be controlled by the service you're backing up to. So if you're using something like Mozy.com or Carbonite.com, not only is your internet connection speed important, but also their internet connection speed and what they throttle you at. So this is something important to think about, because this is why I gave up on Carbonite. Carbonite offered me $50 a year, unlimited online backup. Doesn't that sound fabulous? Doesn't that sound great? Now I'm going to tell you why I hate vendors. Hate vendors with a passion, the lying bastards. Because, so for $50 a year, I got unlimited Carbonite backup. So, since I do these video files, these high-def video files, they're large, so it's like, it's great, $50 to back up all my crap to the internet? Sign me up, and I paid them the $50. And my little computer down here started uploading, and it was uploading, and it was uploading, and it uploaded for a day, and it uploaded for 2 days, and it uploaded for a week, and it uploaded for a month. It was somewhere around the 2-month mark that I gave up, and I uninstalled Carbonite, and I figured my $50 went down the toilet. So this is something, again, to be very careful about. Not only, are you dealing with your connection speed, you're dealing with their systems. Again, one of the things that I keep trying to bang into your guys' heads is back 10 years ago, when we talked about speed, we were always talking about our speed as the consumer, as the office person. Now when we start talking about internet speeds, the bottleneck for these servers many times is what is slowing everything down. So when I scrapped Carbonite, that's why. Their service is what slowed everything down, became it a mess. It was just horrible. So, if you're looking at this, you may be thinking, well, what am I going to do, Eli? Yeah, I want online backup, right? Online backup is great. So I know that all the data gets moved somewhere else. So if there's a tornado or a fire or something happens, I know the data is offsite. Because everybody knows in the old backup systems where we have tapes or we have hard drives, people are supposed to take that data offsite, but it never actually happens. So we want online backup because we want to know that this is actually happening. Well, this is a way for you guys as tech professionals and consultants to make some extra money. Because when you're doing online backup, cloud backup, who says the server you have to back up to is a vendor? Why can't the server that you're backing up to be your server? This is what I would do if I was still a consultant. I still think it would be decent money. So you set up your little backup server here, and you have the clients through the cloud back up to your server. So this is the server that's sitting in your house server sitting in your office, server sitting in your basement like I have, and all of your clients, when they do online backups, they then back up to your server. All this is a file, is a type of file transfer protocol. So you point them at your external IP address, you forward the port to your server, you add in a username and password, and all of a sudden all of your clients are backing up to your server on your premises, and now you're making money and everything's good. Now the benefits of this are a lot. One, when we start thinking about these bottlenecks, now I know here in Baltimore, Maryland, with FiOS for $100 a month, I get 35 megabits per second down and 35 up. So for $100 a month, realistically, I could probably support 20 or 30 clients on that internet connection very easily. If I bill them all $50 a month for the service, that's a hell of a profit, right? You know, again, it's all about the money. So that's $1,500 a month I could be making for $100 worth of bandwidth. We can even go up. So FiOS here for like $200 a month, I can get like 100 megabits per second down, right? So if all these people are pointed at me, that means I could probably deal with 100 different systems all coming in through FiOS. Now the question you may be asking is like, well, Eli, that's nice, but what software are we going to use? Well, you can be using something, again, like Acronis or Ghost, and you would just set this up as some kind of FTP server that everything would get backed up to. Or there are services where you can actually use your own equipment. So LogMeIn has LogMeIn Backup, where for $3 a month, you install the little backup client onto the server or the person's computer, and then you also install the client on your computer, and it will back up to you. So again, so $3 a month per client, and they deal with the application. Or if you're dealing with Windows computers, you can use something called Delta Copy. So what Delta Copy is Delta Copy is a shell, is a container for that rsync solution we were talking about before, where it sends only the bits that have been modified. Well, if you use Delta Copy, you can install that, say when and where you want everything backed up to, and that will be able to back up the data. So this is something that's very important. Again, everybody, whenever they think about online backup, they think about Mozy, they think about Carbonite, they think about all these service providers. Why? Why give them money when they're going to give you subpar service? You don't know how pissed I am about Carbonite. That was just a bunch of crap. 2 months to back up a terabyte of data, and no, it didn't even back up. 2 months before I gave up on backing up. So why pay them money when your clients can be backing up everything to you? Now you're probably thinking, yeah, Eli, but Carbonite's $50 a month, and you want me to bill $50 a year. You want me to bill $50 a month. My clients aren't going to do that. Why would they do that? Well, one, because it's more reliable, it's faster, it'll work. And then two, again, one of the things that nobody ever thinks about, so you back up all this data up onto the internet, right? You back up a terabyte of data up to the internet. Well, what happens when your server crashes and you need to pull all that data down? Now you're waiting for that data to come down. And if you're dealing with a business, a production environment, they profit, they make money from their systems. If their systems are down, they're not making money. They could be losing a few $100s a day, a few $1,000s a day, tens of thousands of dollars a day, because their systems are down. So although the data was backed up, they're now waiting for this data to come back down again, and until it comes back down, you can't do anything. You can't make this system work any faster. Well, if you're the one, you are the one to create the online backup solution and they are backing up to you, then all you do is you wake up in the morning, you grab your cup of coffee, you plug in an external hard drive to your server, you copy their backup files to the external hard drive, you then drive to your client's place, you plug in the external hard drive, you recover off of it, and again, they are back up and running within hours when, if you're trying to pull all that data from the internet, it may take days. Days. And that is going to be horrible. Again, trying to get you guys to think like professionals. It is not simply good enough that the data was backed up. It is about actually being able to use the data. It is about your clients getting back to work as quickly as possible. You can do technically everything right and it's all backed up, but if your client is not able to do work for a week while you're pulling this data down, that's not good for them. Whereas if you come over with your nice little couple terabyte hard drive, you plug it in, you do the recovery, they're back up and running. That is what will be very good. So this is really all there is to the introduction to online backups for technology professionals. Again, there's the art, there's the science, there's things you have to think about. This is what I would be doing. If I was still in the consulting business, as I tell you guys, computer repair is dead. It's dead, right? This is the stuff that's going to pay you money. You can build a crappy little server with an insane amount of storage space for $1,000, and you can point 10, 20, 100 clients at that, and everybody is going to be happy. Especially if you start using a piece of like an operating system like FreeNAS, which allows you to create a network-attached storage device for free. You can build that. You can build them. And it's just great. It's just wonderful. The main thing that I will have you remember, though, is if they're backing up to you, if they're using something like a Cronus or Ghost, remember to split the archive to the smallest size you possibly can, so all those little packets get to be sent to the server. So if there's a problem, it only has to resend one little packet versus one huge, like 10 gig thing. So yeah, so that's basically online backup. Can't say enough. Again, as I try to tell you guys, in the real world, in the professional world, what I would be doing right now, this is the type of service, this is the type of solution I would be trying to sell to my clients. Now for you guys, if you're looking for a solution for yourself, or if you're a non-consultant, non-techie looking to back up stuff for your business, again, doing the online backup to your own servers, you can back up to your own house, right? So this is something to think about. Even if the client doesn't want to back up data to your servers, you could set it up so that their their office systems back up to a server that's at their own house. Therefore, they control all of the data. You don't have to worry about HIPAA compliance and all that stuff because they control all of it, right? That would be the only final thing that I would add to this, is if you are dealing with a client that has things like HIPAA compliance or PCI compliance or any of that, do remember that the data should be encrypted as it is moved from place to place. One, it should be encrypted on the final place where the data is being stored, so the hacker can't get to that. And then also the actual connection should be encrypted so nobody can do a man-in-the-middle attack and be able to grab data as it's going through. That would be the only final bit that I would add. So yeah. So I'm Eli, the computer guy. This was episode 336, Intro to Online Backup Services for Tech Professionals. I hope I gave you some good thoughts to think about. Again, money, 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 money. This is good money. If you're a consultant out there, be doing this. This is what I would be doing. And again, that's not too bad. Spend $1,000 on a server, $100 a month on an internet connection, and you have the possibility of $1,500 for basically just babysitting a server. If that's not good, I don't know what is. So as I wrap up, do remember that I do have an online community, etcgcommunity.com. If you have any questions, if you have any problems, feel free to go on there. We've got about 10,000 members there. Quite a few people are on there every day answering questions, talking back and forth. So if you have any questions, if you want to help anybody else out, please go over to ETCG Community, sign up. It's free, and it's a good time. So I enjoyed taping this episode, and look forward to seeing you at the next one.